every conversation they have with benefactors to finish this sentence. Isn't it amazing? With examples of the good our organizations have accomplished. To complete another sentence, can you imagine, with examples of how together effective nonprofits and inspired benefactors have changed people's lives and communities? When in an I-thou relationship with benefactors, the use of appreciative inquiry becomes a natural extension of our philosophy. Instead of talking about the needs of a nonprofit or the challenges and problems facing an organization, a shift in the nature of the questions we use is essential. Nonprofit organizations which speak consistently of their needs become, in fact, needy and uninspiring. Instead, specific training in appreciative inquiry developed by David Cooperrider and his followers talks of individuals and institutions' highest hopes and aspirations. Lynn Twist, author of a wonderful book, The Soul of Money, expressed it best when she observed, if we can, we must shift our frame of reference from one of problem solving to one that seeks to identify the resources available in any collection of people who are inspiring, mobilizing, and sustaining positive change. What you appreciate, the way you direct your attention, determines the very quality of your life. Well, appreciative inquiry is all about co-creating an idealized future for ourselves and for our communities. Dear friends, in fact, one of my friends in the audience, dear friends of ours, wrote a wonderful book called What Kind of World Do You Want? This is a book by Jim Lord and Pam McAllister, but it is the essential question behind all appreciative philanthropy. Can you envision our world at its best? Is achieving these aspirations not a noble and spiritual purpose for our lives? Through observation and inquiry, we examine if individuals have a propensity for accumulating in their lives, if they have what psychologists call a high material value orientation, a habit of buying things rather than a more spiritual orientation of creating meaning, we can in fact determine their philanthropic nature or lack thereof. Newcomers to our profession should be taught, coached, and mentored in storytelling techniques and questioning skills that can unlock a philanthropic nature and maximize philanthropic potential. I really believe self-assessment instruments can be created, and I've had a shot at it. I'll be happy to send those to you later if you're so inclined. These instruments can be created to determine if development officers are indeed enhancing relationship equity with benefactors and the relationship quotient, as more importantly, between the benefactor and the institution. Simple Likert scales can be employed to determine how we assess evolving relationships between development officers and benefactors, as well as to determine how development officers are shaping important relationships between benefactors and their institutions. Questions can be taught and observational skills developed to determine if individuals are primarily egocentric and self-absorbed, or other-centric and generative. Understanding and teaching Erik Erikson's stages of adult development can help in this regard. Erikson's work has been important to me in my work, where he says that, we go through life, early in life, the focus is on the self. We're very self-absorbed, very egocentric. You might see the puzzle pieces, or think about it as a kaleidoscope you're developing of your life. And as you age and you're a teenager, it's still rather self-focused. Later in life, as you grow up, still self-focused. I shouldn't ask how many who are in marriages, whether the men are still self-focused, but the truth is they probably are. But then after mate selection and having children, and as we age, actually at the end of our life, we're supposed to be giving away those puzzle pieces. That kaleidoscope of who we are and what we mean in the world should be given away. Joan Erikson said it best, I think, when she said that we should live a life so that we are what we have given. And this is truly what the Ericksons meant with being generative and authentic. Are potential philanthropic partners accumulators amassing fortunes like monopoly properties with a winner-take-all mentality? Or are they wired more like some of their souls described in the book Driven, who have a propensity towards caring and sharing? It's a wonderful book, out of Harvard, and it talks about our 4 basic drives, or the way we're wired, for accumulating things, experiences, for defending those things or experiences, or for caring and sharing. And we're all wired to a different degree with those 4 basic drives. I'll take a wild shot at it today. The people that are interested in accumulating and defending may not be your philanthropic, natural philanthropists for you, but I gravitate towards the caring and sharing group. Well, master key questions centering on an individual's spirituality, intellectual curiosity, decision-making, learning, and societal, social styles can be articulated and taught. How to earn trust and to ask ever-deepening questions concerning core values can be modeled in practice. Appreciative inquiry workshops abound, and our entire department just finished a Franklin Covey class on trust building. It was the first class I'd ever taken on trust, and I could never find people in our business who've taken classes on trust building, which I think is the essential core value. It is true that highly skilled and experienced professionals in philanthropy have already developed or honed their relationship building skills. They have an armamentarium of thoughtful questions to ask benefactors. They're skillful at knowing when they have permission to ask benefactors significant questions. But veterans and newcomers alike would benefit from a structured system of examining what we know and do not know about benefactors. Simple Likert scale questions can also be developed that help monitor and chart the relationship metrics of what I call encounters, engagements, and experiences with benefactors. Through the Center on Philanthropy and the Fundraising School, many of us have worked very hard to change the language of our business. The thought of calling people suspects and prospects, as if we're in the law enforcement or mining industry, is not a very respectful place to be in philanthropy. So I'm trying encounters, engagements, and experiences. Such a series of weighted questions can determine how skilled a development officer is at creating and strengthening relationships with benefactors. I think the 2 master key questions that mentors or coaches in the field would ask: what is the relationship equity that this development officer has with this benefactor? How does he or she resonate with the benefactor, and what is their level of trust? The second master key question: what is the institutional relationship quotient with this benefactor? Is the development officer strengthening the ties between the benefactor and the organization, its leaders, and its mission? By asking what we know and what we have yet to discern about potential benefactors, we begin to see what respectful questions and crucial conversations we have to understand what project might resonate with them philanthropically. Is it an inspiring initiative that could bring meaning to the benefactor's life? Is it the right time, the right scale, the right project for the individual? Is it a project that can grow when developed and engage the benefactor's heart and mind over his or her lifetime? All individuals go through the ages and stages of adult development, so beautifully articulated by Eric and Joan Erickson. And as I said, they contend that later in one's life you can either ripen or spoil, either reach generativity and integrity or become more and more self-absorbed and stagnant. By observing benefactors' actions over a period of years and by probing values, one can be sensitive about emotional events, particularly significant emotional events occurring in their lives. What triggers and shifts are occurring in lives of our philanthropists that are emotional moments favorable for philanthropic dialogues, or moments when it's important to graciously give benefactors time and space to deal with the trials and tribulations of life? Shervish again encourages us by saying that when, quote, a process of discernment is carried out with no hidden agendas and with the purpose of helping wealth holders uncover their true aspirations, a deeper commitment to philanthropy ensues, unquote. Assessing benefactors' significant emotional events and key indicators of shifts in thinking is essential when exploring gifts of significance. Do benefactors easily discuss death and dying, estate planning, and ultimate legacies? How do they define as a family when enough is enough? They're very important, very significant master key questions that if we have enough relationship equity with benefactors we can ask. The two that I find most interesting, and sometimes they're not answered for years after you ask them, are the questions, how much is enough for the children? And the corollary, and more challenging question, how much is too much for the children? And if you work long enough with entrepreneurs, and I've spent a career in it, you'll know that the greatest fear they have is the entitlement syndrome when too much has been given to children and all motivation has been dashed. Bill Gates and Warren Buffett have decided how much is enough. That'll be curious how the next generation feels about that when they've lived in $70 million houses. How much is enough? Well, at assessing these significant emotional events are important. These are not new concepts or questions, but a deliberate system of relationship-based evaluations that can be created and that will enable managers to determine if development officers are truly affecting the lives of benefactors. Do they have the skills to engage others in questions of significance? Our work requires a purposeful shift to authentic, ever-deepening relationships and not solely requests for money and dollar-based metrics. What might make up a philanthropic nature? A potential to be generous. What roles do compassion, empathy, and gratitude play in the philanthropic personality? How might we deliberately assess these characteristics through stories, parables, metaphors, and questions? Discussing recent disasters that afflict the world reveals levels of empathy and compassion in potential benefactors. Determine if a person's empathy is more based viscerally around feelings, like this is tragic and I'm compelled to help, or whether empathy is more grounded in learned behaviors, as in parents who always taught people to whom much is given, much is required, and that it is the obligation of wealth to be generative and helping others. Knowing the predominant form of empathy helps us to better understand individuals and to authentically engage them in conversations about philanthropy. Gilmore and Pine, in the book Authenticity, teach us that, quote, today participating in meaningful experiences represents the largest unmet need of Americans, more precious than economic capital, religion, country, art, family, and education. These are the resources that are literally priceless, from which we draw distinctions regarding our purpose in life. An outline of the philosophy behind appreciative philanthropy, I thought rather than just rail on that we need to change to qualitative-based metrics, I prepared a handout which might outline how we might think about structuring curriculum and conversations. And I have developed specific pre-visit engagement strategy, questions, evaluations, strategy sessions, so that it's not just, oh, we have to change everything, thank you, goodbye. But rather